One of the things that shocked me the most is the high levels of overcrowding within the units. Because one or two families there, when we did a survey, had 19 people staying in a two-roomed house of about 21 square meters. So that's probably one of the highest densities I've ever experienced.
It's extremely busy. You'll see the kids, most of them, they're not attending schools. The youth, they're unemployed. So it's, to them, what I saw there is what normally I see as a weekend. It's fairly busy, which brings question as to why aren't the kids going to school? Why is everyone in their pajamas, most people in their pajamas, not going to work? That was my first impression, and the sizes of the houses. I was a bit concerned because they seemed too small to fit normal families. In my first week there, I visited the schools and I saw the condition that they were in, and it wasn't a conducive learning environment for anyone.
Now, as a planner, if you look at the statistics, yes, it's overcrowded and it's dense, but it's not bad in terms of what you actually need for efficient urban development. It's just that the quality of housing is not up to standard. It is low rise. In other words, in other areas, you'd have the same density, but you've got better quality houses in maybe multiple dwelling units in multiple floors, etc. In Helenvale, you have the same amount of people in very small units on a property together with backyard informal structures. It's overcrowded. You have families of 10, 20 people living in very, very small spaces. So as part of the program, the concept at the time was to develop a pilot housing settlement in Helenvale that we could showcase what sort of housing improvements could be done. We synthesized a lot of projects, a lot of proposals into a number of components. And those components really spoke to a situational approach in terms of what you do in a particular space. Also a social approach. So what could communities do, and how can we galvanize what was there already in terms of how the communities from a social perspective responded to their own issues, and then also an institutional approach. So what was there in terms of government, in terms of schools, in terms of NGOs, that we could garner expertise and support and funding from.
That means that every idea, every design was approved 100% by the community. It came from the community. So they had some public participation meetings, a lot of them, to hear from them what are the issues, what are the challenges, what would you like to see, how do we better Helenvale, how do we better the quality of living in Helenvale, what would you like to see? So that's when now the community came with the ideas of the sidewalks, of refurbishing the schools, and to promote some culture of sport, because sport is very big in Helenvale.
We focused on the infrastructure and public space component. That entailed looking at schools, the various schools in the area, and how to upgrade them to make them safer. Also, we looked at sports precincts and how to upgrade them. And then the third, safer routes component, we looked at the various routes that are connected to the various primary schools and how the kids walk from home to school and back. This whole project actually derived from a feasibility study where we looked at crime hotspots in the whole of Helenvale, and then the projects that derived from those specific hotspots and trying to implement specific projects there to make it more safe. We specifically focused on routes and upgrading those specific routes so that they are more, so people will use them more frequently, so it's more active, activities happen along those streets, and then you also have passive surveillance. We I had public participation meetings with the various schools, and then each route had a different theme. So the one school we had a poetry theme, the other route we had a play theme, and then the third route we had a music theme. So in the poetry theme we got some of the school kids involved, and they wrote some poetry pieces which we then cast in concrete panels. The music route, some of the components there include music notes on a piano. We also had some guitar frets with bollards that are used as seating. And then with the play route, we had some sports balls done in mosaic, some hopscotch panels where kids could play in. So just really trying to uplift and create fun elements geared towards the kids.
So the things that we underestimated was the level of disconnect between the agencies of government. This project is a co-financed project. So the German Development Bank is investing a certain amount of 5 million euros into the project, and the counter-funding with South African local, provincial and national players was a means to unlock some of the opportunities of priority investment by South African. So in the Department of Education, for instance, we assumed that the Department of Education would support not only with co-investments, but aligning the interventions to safer schools, as an example. We similarly experienced an example of the Department of Social Development already investing in social infrastructure and social programs. And so those sort of things we assumed were already far advanced. But what we had to really rethink was the institutional alignment.
The MBDA was not a housing company and had no mandate for housing. As part of the hub, even, we actually developed a whole business plan and a housing strategy to deal with it. And this was actually put to the city. And I think it sort of has lost traction with the various executive directors that we've seen in the Human Settlements Department. Helenvale at one point, and I still believe, has been identified as a mega housing catalytic project in the city.
I think the challenge with Helenvale is the fact that most of the houses in the older part of Helenvale have been transferred to the families. So in terms of the government current subsidy program, is that once you've received the house, the government almost abrogates its responsibility to look after that. But that presupposes that the house that you got at least satisfies the minimum norms and standards, which are maybe a 40 square meter house with a separate 2-bedroom unit. Helenvale has none of those things. I mean, it's got half the size of the unit. I think that the challenge perhaps was that what we find in most of the housing projects in South Africa, it's best that the concepts are translated into a pilot project at the very least, so there is a physical construction and people can see.
So in looking back as to what the successes of SPUU has been, we've had a lot of challenges with around the infrastructure implementation progress, starts and stoppages and delays, etc. So it's still there, still believe it's a priority, and it's something to still explore, whether in SPUU or post SPUU. My view is that if you don't address the housing in Helenvale, you actually would not have done a lot. It really is at the crux of so many things. And if you really want to impact people personally, it is going to be in the place where they stay. It's going to be in the homes.
There is definitely a compelling vision. I think it would be, for me, and maybe I'm going to be biased because I'm a built environment professional, I would like to see the physical improvement, the urban renewal in Helenvale, and the improvement in health and safety of the communities. But that obviously means that the living spaces have got to be improved. They have to be much better than they are, because I think some of the social problems, not some, but probably quite a number of the social problems are a result of the lack of adequate space for living.
It might take some time. It's gonna take time. The Helenvale we all want to see, we're not gonna see in the next 3 to 4 years. It'll definitely take time. There is a lot of work to be done there, but it can be done. If we work together, it can be done. We all have a vision. We all want to sleep at night without hearing a gunshot or with a window open. That can be done, but we need to work together. But it will take time because the decay in Helenvale is too much and it needs a lot of work, especially with the mine. We need to work with the mine.